Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show dedicated to making you the most well-informed person in the room in record time.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're taking on a challenge from a listener that I think goes right to the heart of meditative practice. The question is, how do you achieve that profound meditative absorption, what's often called jhana, and this is the key part, how do you make it happen regularly, reliably?
It's a core question, absolutely, because the path can look like a complete paradox from the outside.
Right.
You hear teachers talking about jhana as the state of, ultimate stillness and profound letting go.
Surrender.
Exactly. But then all the instructions you get beforehand demand this incredibly intense effort.
So our listener is stuck. They want to know, do I push hard or do I surrender completely? And how do those two, well, they seem like total opposites. How do they work together?
That's the tension. That's the nut we have to crack.
That dualism, yeah. Effort versus letting go. On one hand, you're told to strive with the intensity of, someone whose hair is on fire.
That's the one.
And then on the other hand, the goal is cessation, stillness, nothing.
And what's so valuable about the sources we've gathered is that they provide a really detailed, progressive roadmap. It doesn't just answer the question, it shows exactly how the effort leads very organically to the letting go.
So it's not a mystery.
Not at all. They confirm jhana isn't some random mystical thing that just happens to you if you're lucky.
Yeah.
It's the highly predictable, natural result of specific conditions being meticulously cultivated. The key is understanding that the effort is applied to the cultivation.
Okay.
And that then allows the natural state of stillness to emerge on its own.
So it's a technical process.
Yeah.
There are inputs and there are predictable outputs.
Exactly. And we see right away that achieving jhana is basically synonymous with what's called right immersion or chandasamādhi.
Okay.
And this absorption state, it's not presented as some standalone technique you can just practice in isolation. It's the culmination, the capstone of the entire Noble Eightfold Path.
So everything else has to be in place first.
Everything. When that whole path is fully developed, from right view all the way through right livelihood, it creates a psychological framework that's defined by seclusion, fading away, and ultimately cessation.
And the sources explicitly link that entire system to the final act of release, the letting go.
They do, and this is critical. Developing the path itself is said to slant, slope, and incline toward extinguishment. The texts are very clear on this. The Noble Eightfold Path ripens as letting go.
Ripens. I like that word.
It's perfect, isn't it? The letting go is the destination. It's the fruit of the harvest. But the path, the cultivation, that's the active part. That's where all the effort goes.
So the initial push is just clearing the mind's obstacles so that cessation can happen naturally.
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so let's start at the absolute beginning. If we're trying to create this ideal mental environment for deep immersion, the first thing we have to do is remove all the internal turbulence. So what is the bedrock? What's the absolute requirement that has to be in place before you can even think about generating stillness?
The sources are, they're completely uncompromising on this point.
Okay.
The foundation is ethical living, absolute purity of conduct. And this isn't just a moral mandate for the sake of being a good person in society.
Right, it's functional.
It's a vital, functional requirement for deep concentration. Because without it, the mind carries a fundamental weight. Regret.
Regret. That's an interesting word choice. Why does regret, this simple human emotion, act as such a powerful spiritual barrier? Why does it block jhana?
Because regret is mental friction.
Friction.
Think about it. If you've acted unskillfully with your body, your speech, or even your mind, you're carrying this psychological residue. And that residue, it translates into worry, remorse, an underlying sense of anxiety. The mind is constantly disturbed, either by the potential consequences or just the memory of the action. It can never, ever truly settle into tranquility.
So freedom from regret is the absolute prerequisite for any kind of mental composure.
It's the first link in a very precise, progressive chain. The sources detail it beautifully. Once that ethical foundation is secure and you're free of regret, the path just opens up.
How so?
Freedom from regret leads to joy. That joy leads to rapture. The rapture leads to tranquility, which in turn leads to bliss. And finally, that bliss is the immediate cause for right immersion.
Wow. So if that first step, no regret, is missing, the entire sequence just collapses.
It can't even get started.
So it makes the ethical behavior less about being a good person and more about, I guess, strategic psychological maintenance.
Yeah.
You're cleaning the canvas so that these subtle states of absorption can actually arise without being smeared or destabilized.
Absolutely. And we have to understand the quality of the conduct that's required here.
It's not just don't do bad things.
Not at all. The source material describes this ethical conduct as being, I'm quoting here, loved by the noble ones, unbroken, impeccable, spotless, and unmarred, liberating, praised by sensible people, not mistaken, and leading to immersion.
Unbroken, impeccable, spotless. Those are strong words.
They demand a radical, thorough integrity. If there is a single crack in that foundation, a single area where you're deceiving yourself or someone else, that tiny imperfection will be the very source of the regret that prevents deep concentration.
That's a powerful standard. Okay, so once that basic ethical integrity is established and regret is minimized, what's the next immediate prerequisite?
It's the deliberate creation of space. And it's a dual creation, seclusion and restraint.
Seclusion and restraint.
You need to reduce the external input, and you need to manage your internal reaction to whatever input is left. The jhanas themselves are explicitly described as having rapture and bliss born of seclusion.
So seclusion isn't just a nice to have, it's a necessary component of the state itself.
It's the environment in which the deep mind can blossom. This is why the texts are constantly encouraging the practitioner to seek out remote lodgings.
Right, like the wilderness, the root of a tree, an empty hut.
Exactly. And while most of us can't just go live under a free root, the principle is the same. We have to proactively minimize our sensory and social complexity. We have to reduce the mind's habitual need to react to things. This physical seclusion is the first layer of the boundary.
But even when someone does manage to find a quiet space, they often find that the real noise is, inside their own head.
Of course.
So how does the practice address the internal input that follows us into that empty hut?
And that's where sense restraint becomes functionally vital. This is where the effort really begins to be applied actively. The instruction is very precise. The practitioner must not get caught up in the features and the details of sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, or even ideas.
Okay, let's elaborate on that distinction. What's the difference between just perceiving a sight and getting caught up in its features and details?
It's the difference between observing a color and launching into a whole chain of thought about that color. So, for example, if you see an object, let's say a beautiful chair, just seeing the chair is perception. Getting caught up in its features and details means you immediately start analyzing the quality of the wood, assessing its market value, thinking about where you'd put it in your house, comparing it mentally to other chairs you've seen.
The whole story.
The whole story. And all of that conceptual elaboration is the fuel for what the texts call the bad, unskillful qualities of covetousness and displeasure.
So sense restraint isn't about closing your eyes and plugging your ears. It's about regulating the mind's reaction to what's coming in.
Precisely. If the faculty of sight or hearing or mind is just left unrestrained, those unskillful qualities, the covetousness and displeasure, they just become overwhelming. And that leads right back to the regret and agitation we were just talking about.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is.
Yeah.
But by actively protecting the senses, by seeing the sight, hearing the sound, but not chasing after the pleasant details or recoiling from the unpleasant ones, the practitioner prevents the fuel for mental turbulence from ever igniting. And the text promises that this radical restraint yields an unsullied bliss inside themselves.
That unsullied bliss sounds like the first little reward of the groundwork itself, which probably helps reinforce the practice. It really seems like this whole groundwork, phase, ethics, seclusion, restraint, is ultimately a strategic move to just dismantle clinging.
That's the ultimate truth the practice reveals. The effort you put into establishing purity and restraint ensures the mind is no longer feeding the cycle of existence. The sources identify grasping as the ultimate cause of continued existence, which leads to suffering,
Right.
as they say. One who exists falls into suffering. Death comes to those who are born. This is the origination of suffering. So ending that grasping by building these protective layers is the primary goal of the groundwork.
So if you successfully guard the sense doors and live ethically, you've basically starved the craving mechanism.
You have. And only then can you begin the intensive, focused work of concentration. So now the obstacles have been minimized, the ground is fertile, and we can address that paradox head on, the role of effort. Since the destination is stillness and letting go, many contemplative traditions can mistakenly promote passivity, just waiting for grace to strike.
But that's not what we see here.
The sources we're examining fundamentally reject that view. The deep dive into Soṇa is characterized by right effort. And this is not passive resignation. It is defined by active, directional striving.
So there's no gentle floating into jhana. You have to aggressively but skillfully engineer the mental conditions for it to arise. What exactly does right effort entail?
Right effort is usually defined as striving for 4 key outcomes.
Okay.
First, you apply effort to prevent bad, unskillful qualities that haven't shown up yet from arising at all.
Preemptive.
Exactly. Second, you abandon bad, unskillful qualities that have already arisen. Third, you develop skillful qualities that aren't there yet. And fourth, you maintain and cultivate the skillful qualities that you've already established.
It sounds like a full-time job of mental ecology. You're constantly monitoring and managing the state of your own mind.
That's a great way to put it.
So that implies a very focused, almost surgical intention behind the effort. What's the emotional or psychological drive that fuels this relentless, fourfold striving?
That drive is chanda. It's often translated as enthusiasm or zealous intention.
Canda.
It's the specific, targeted will to succeed in the practice. The texts connect the deep concentration needed for, say, psychic power, and by extension, jhana, directly to the basis of immersion due to enthusiasm or chanda and active effort. If you don't have chanda, you just don't have the drive to engage in right effort.
So chanda is the specific, targeted drive. It's the will to perfect the practice itself, not just generalized ambition for worldly things. And we see that energy, Viriya, is so fundamental, it's listed as one of the 5 spiritual faculties.
Alongside faith, mindfulness, immersion, and wisdom, yes. And this energy has to be relentlessly developed and cultivated to give up the fetters, those deep habitual ties that bind us to suffering.
And to give our listener a true sense of the intensity that's required here, the sources offer one of the most powerful and, I think, memorable metaphors I've ever come across.
The fire simile.
The fire simile. The text asks you to consider the urgency you would apply if your clothes, or even more dramatically your head, were suddenly on fire. You wouldn't apply minimal effort. You wouldn't debate whether it was a good time to deal with it.
You'd apply extraordinary enthusiasm, effort, zeal, vigor, perseverance, mindfulness, and situational awareness to put it out immediately. It's a frantic life-or-death response.
Exactly. And the extraordinary implication here is that the same level of immediacy must be applied not to some...
And that's where the sources move beyond simple intensity and provide these really practical mental management techniques. The effort required is structured and proactive. The long discourses detail 8 specific grounds for arousing energy.
8 grounds for arousing energy.
Meaning ways to preemptively ensure your focus stays razor sharp.
So this is like a strategic energy management plan. Can you walk us through those 8 points?
Of course. And these 8 points really show that effort isn't just for when you're formally meditating. It's continuous across your entire day.
Okay.
1. Energy before work. If you have a task to do, you rouse energy before you start, thinking, I will not give up until this is done.
You start committed.
2. Energy during work. You maintain that resolve. I'll keep striving, even if my body gets tired, until the task is accomplished. 3. Energy after work. You finish, you acknowledge it, but you immediately apply energy to the next phase. Okay, I did that. Now I'll use this momentum for the instructions of the Buddhas.
It's relentless.
It is. 4 and 5 are before and during a journey. You resolve to maintain your practice until you arrive. 6 is when you get back. You immediately apply energy to rest mindfully. 7 is when you fall ill. You think, I may be sick, but my mental effort will not diminish. And 8 is after you recover. You recognize how precious health is, and you intensify your practice, resolved not to fall back into complacency.
Wow. That paints a picture of comprehensive, structured, 247 mental diligence. It's not just about the sitting session. It's about making every single moment a focused application of energy toward the goal.
Exactly. This proactive management is key. This active effort, this rational application of mind is highly beneficial. The sources say that the rational application of mind fuels the arising and development of the awakening factor of immersion.
So it's all connected.
If your mind is applied rationally to the materials of serenity like the breath, the awakening factor of immersion is fueled and fully developed. The effort here is highly directional and purposeful, aimed at the singular goal of stillness.
So we have the foundation established, the ethics, the seclusion, the sense restraint. And we have the zealous drive, the chanda, and the right effort to actually do the work with this radical urgency.
Right.
Now we get to the specific methodology. How do we use that intensely focused energy in the moment to transition from just striving to deep concentration to jhana?
The path dictates that the bridge between that vigorous effort and profound stillness is the development of the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, or satipatthana.
Satipatthana.
This is the direct, practical way to train the mind to settle itself and stabilize itself for immersion.
And what does this practice entail beyond the simple idea of being present? It sounds like it's a deep, systematic investigation.
It is a systematic process. It's awareness across 4 domains: observing the body, observing feelings, observing the mind itself, and observing principles or mental qualities.
And what's the key instruction? What makes this practice actually lead to jhana?
It's the quality of the observation. The practitioner must be keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure, desire and aversion for the world.
That last part links it right back to our groundwork. So the mindfulness has to be free of the grasping that we controlled through sense restraint.
Precisely. If you're practicing mindfulness while you're simultaneously grasping at things or recoiling from them, it's not true satipatthana. Genuine mindfulness anchors the mind to present reality without judgment, without manipulation, and that stabilizes it enough for the unified state of immersion to arise.
So let's hone in on the most detailed practical technique described in the text, the one explicitly linked to achieving jhana. Mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati.
Yes.
This is where the instruction becomes incredibly granular.
It does. The precision is astonishing. The instructions begin with the setting, which reiterates the need for seclusion. Go to a secluded place, sit cross-legged, set the body straight, establish mindfulness. Then the practice moves through a series of specific steps designed to refine your attention.
The initial steps are pretty straightforward observation, right? Noting if you're breathing in or out heavily or lightly, long or short.
Yes, but the deeper training steps are where the focus really sharpens.
Okay.
The practitioner practices these sequences that actively modify and refine the mental experience. For example, I'll breathe in experiencing the whole body, and I'll breathe out stilling physical processes.
And the sources clarify that the breath itself is considered a certain aspect of the body. So practicing this way is just the ongoing meticulous application of observing an aspect of the body keenly and mindfully.
That's right.
Stilling the physical processes is a huge step. That sounds like it's leading directly toward jhana 4, where the physical process is meant to be stilled entirely. But what are the direct benefits of practicing anapanasati in this detailed way? The sources mention the fulfillment of the 7 awakening factors.
And that's a critical connection. The sources state that when mindfulness of breathing is developed, it fulfills the 7 awakening factors, the bodhanga. And these factors are the mental qualities that lead directly to enlightenment.
So what are they?
Well, first you have mindfulness, which is established by the constant, keen awareness of the breath. Then investigation of principles, by noting the characteristics of the breath. Third is energy, which is maintained by that focused, zealous intention, the chanda.
Right.
Then rapture arises as the mind settles. That leads to tranquility. Then immersion, which is the jhana state itself. And finally, equanimity, the profound balance that defines the higher jhanas.
So that shows the mechanism.
Yeah.
The method, anapanasati, generates the factors, and the factors lead directly to the result, which is jhana. And crucially, the instructions don't leave the transition to jhana up to chance, do they? They include explicit guidance.
Absolutely. This confirms that the transition into deep immersion is intended, it's guided, it's fueled by this mindfulness. The practice includes these 2 crucial steps that link the method directly to the goal. You practice. I'll breathe in immersing the mind in samadhi, and I'll breathe out freeing the mind. You are literally directing your effort and awareness to unify the mind until it achieves that deeply concentrated state.
So it's the convergence point. All the ethical groundwork, all the vigorous effort, all the sensory restraint, it all converges on a single object. The breath and the mind is skillfully directed to unify around it. It's the moment where relishing and greed for external things just end, and the mind becomes well freed.
And once this immersion is achieved, the training doesn't stop. The sources instruct the practitioner to develop immersion further in various ways, with initial and sustained attention, without it, with rapture, without rapture, with pleasure, or with equanimity. It shows that jhana isn't just a singular peak experience, it's a versatile training ground for the higher mind, meant to be cultivated regularly.
Okay, so the successful application of this intense effort and this detailed mindfulness, particularly through anapanasati, leads naturally to the 4 progressive steps of meditative absorption.
Yes, the training in the higher mind.
And this must be cultivated regularly. So let's detail this internal refinement and show how that effort evolves into stillness.
The first barrier the meditator has to overcome is sensual desire and unskillful thoughts. This leads to the first absorption, or jhana 1. It's characterized by being quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities.
That's defined by what?
By profound physical and mental sensations of rapture, piti, and bliss, sukha. And this is key. It's explicitly accompanied by placing the mind and keeping it connected. Initial and sustained attention.
So jhana 1, even though it's sublime, is still an actively sustained state. There's still effort involved in holding the object. The mind is deep, but it's still working to maintain that deep seclusion.
Exactly. The mind is still using its faculties of thought and examination, though they're very refined, to stay with the object. And this effort must then be stilled to go deeper. Which brings us to the second absorption, jhana 2.
What's the key technical distinction here?
The defining characteristic of jhana 2 is the stilling of that initial and sustained attention. The placing and keeping of the mind connected. The mind has settled so profoundly that the effort of directing attention just isn't needed anymore. The process becomes unified, automatic.
And what defines this state?
It's defined by rapture and bliss born solely of immersion. It's characterized by internal clarity and the mind becoming unified.
This is where we need to distinguish between piti, the rapture, and sukha, the bliss. They're both present, but they're different qualities of joy.
That distinction is crucial for understanding the progression. Piti, or rapture, is often described as an exciting, thrilling joy, a physical, sometimes vibrating or intense sensation that floods the body.
The exhilarating feeling.
It's the exhilarating feeling of release from internal conflict. Sukha, or bliss, is more stable, more pervasive, a deep satisfaction, a profound sense of contentment and well-being.
And both are present in jhana 2.
They are, and the text emphasizes this joy is not of the flesh, meaning it's spiritual and entirely independent of any external sensory stimulation.
The sources offer a beautiful natural analogy to capture this profound internal feeling of jhana 2, don't they?
They do. They describe the experience as being like a deep lake that's fed entirely by a cool spring from within. There's no external inlet, no rainfall. The cool water just wells up from inside, and it drenches, steeps, fills, and spreads throughout the entire lake.
And in the same way, the practitioner drenches their entire body with this rapture and bliss born of immersion.
Yes. The idea is visceral. There's no part of your body that's untouched by this profound, internally generated joy.
That really underscores the power of internal generation. This state sounds so complete. So why does the mind proceed beyond it into the third absorption, jhana 3? Why would you give up that pervasive rapture?
Because rapture, piti, even spiritual rapture, is still a form of excitement. It's dynamic, and therefore it's relatively coarse. The mind is striving for ultimate subtlety and stability. In jhana 3, the rapture fades away. It's given up. What remains is a state characterized by profound equanimity, heightened mindfulness, and that stable, quiet bliss, sukha, that the noble ones praise. The pleasure is now perfectly balanced and quiet. The mind is intensely aware, but the experience is purely centered and non-reactive.
It's a refinement of the joy itself. You let go of the excitement to attain a deeper peace, which leads us to the culmination of the absorptions, the fourth absorption, jhana 4.
This is the state of ultimate sensory quietude within the cultivated mind. It involves giving up both pleasure and pain, ending all former happiness, sadness.
Even the bliss is gone.
All traces of sukha, bliss, are abandoned because they too are a form of sensation. Only pure, non-reactive equanimity and profound mindfulness remain. And the sources emphasize that in this state, the physical process is stilled.
So the breath is incredibly subtle, and the body achieves this deep physiological stillness. What analogy is used to describe the quality of the mind in this ultra-refined, purified state?
The quality of mind is described as spreading the body with a pure, bright mind, and it's likened to a person sitting wrapped from head to foot in white cloth.
So there's no part of the body that isn't spread over with that pure, bright mind.
Exactly. It suggests a completely unified, luminous, purified mental awareness that has transcended the need for any sensory input at all, external or internal. And this perfect unification, achieved through jhana 4, is the absolute platform required for the final, liberating insight. And this brings us right back to the conclusion of our listener's paradox. We've applied intense ethical discipline and zealous effort to achieve a state of ultimate stillness. But the jhana states, they aren't the final goal. They're the most powerful tool available to generate profound insight into the nature of reality.
So the mind is completely unified and stable in the fourth jhana. How exactly is it used to generate wisdom?
The unified mind is then directed toward the knowledge of the ending of defilements. Because the mind is utterly free from the noise and distraction of the senses, it's in a position to examine existence with a clarity that is otherwise impossible. This unified, imperturbable state allows the practitioner to see the importance of non-grasping and impermanence.
And the primary object of this examination is the five components of existence, the five aggregates. Let's just clarify those for our listener because they are the central objects of suffering.
Absolutely. The five aggregates, or khandas, are the totality of our conditioned experience. So you have form, which is the physical body; feeling, the sensations of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral; perception, which is recognition and labeling; choices, which are volitional formations and intentions; and consciousness, the awareness that knows.
The sum total of what we call me.
Precisely, and the deeply concentrated mind examines these five components.
What does it see about them?
It realizes that all five aggregates are universally impermanent. They are therefore characterized by suffering, and they are perishable.
And if something is changing, subject to suffering, and perishable.
The logical conclusion is that it is not fit to be regarded as oneself. This is not mine, I am not this is not myself.
So the insight isn't just a philosophical concept. It's a direct, undeniable experiential fact that's revealed by the purified mind. The jhana state provides the laser focus needed to realize that the components of self are fundamentally unstable.
Correct. And when one truly sees this impermanence with right understanding, when this realization is integrated on a deep experiential level, all sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress are just given up. You live without anxiety, happily, because you've finally stopped identifying with what is perishable.
It sounds like the act of letting go, or valsaga, isn't an action in itself, but it's the inevitable psychological result of seeing the truth of impermanence.
It is the natural consequence of having thoroughly purified the mind and gained profound experiential knowledge. And this is the resolution of our initial paradox. The sources confirm it repeatedly. The noble eightfold path, which requires all that vigorous effort and culminates in right immersion, ripens as letting go. The awakening factor of immersion is developed specifically to culminate in practices that ripen as letting go.
So the effort is the engine that clears all the weeds and builds the viewing platform, which is jhana. The stillness of that platform allows the observer to see reality, which is impermanence. And the recognition of impermanence automatically triggers the cessation of grasping.
Yes. The highest, most peaceful perception is realized through the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, fading away, cessation, extinguishment. When the mind is well freed from attachment to the aggregates, relishing and greed for conditioned existence naturally cease. The effort creates the conditions for cessation to occur.
So to summarize the answer for our listener, achieving jhana regularly requires intense ethical discipline to remove regret, and focused enthusiasm chanda and effort applied relentlessly across all 8 of those grounds for arousing energy. These are the active tools you use to create the absolute seclusion and stillness of jhana. And that stillness then allows the mind to organically recognize impermanence and thus let go. The whole process is a sophisticated feedback loop.
The successful cultivation of this path, from foundational ethics all the way to the profound concentration of jhana, it's not just about having momentary states of calm. The culmination of this successful practice is described as realizing the undefiled freedom of heart and freedom by wisdom in this very life due to the ending of defilements.
That's the complete path laid bare, from the starting line of ethical living all the way to liberation by wisdom. We've detailed the technical structure. You have ethics and restraint, which leads to intense effort and proactive energy management. That fuels systematic mindfulness, like anapanasati, achieving the 7 awakening factors. That leads to immersion, the jhana progression, refining rapture into pure equanimity.
Which is the platform for insight.
Insight into the impermanence of the aggregates. And that insight naturally results in letting go, and finally, freedom.
It is a beautifully logical and, crucially, an achievable system, provided the necessary effort is applied.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to leave you with, based on this deep dive. The sources detail that intense, focused right immersion is absolutely necessary to realize that the sensory world sights, sounds, feelings, ideas is universally characterized by suffering and impermanence.
Right.
So if immersion is the prerequisite for this true liberating understanding, then consider this. What overlooked areas in your current daily life are contributing to the craving and heedlessness that prevent the stillness necessary for this crucial letting go? Is it the unguarded sense doors that you have yet to restrain? The lack of intentional seclusion? Or is it the absence of that fire on the head urgency when you're dealing with unskillful mental qualities?
Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep striving with vigor on the path to stillness.
We'll see you next time for the next Deep Dive.